The human delegation had never been so far from Earth, and even in the shuttle, they could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. Virix Prime, a planet of swirling crystal towers and gleaming skies, shimmered under its two suns. No map, no textbook, no history lesson had prepared them for what awaited on this alien world. The mission was simple on paper. Diplomacy. Humanity wanted allies, trade, and knowledge. But the moment they landed, it was clear that this mission was unlike any other. The landing platform was enormous, carved from the same crystalline material that reflected sunlight in every direction. Alien guards, tall and elegantly built, moved with silent precision. Their faces were covered in translucent masks that changed colors with their emotions, a language the humans could not read. The delegation, led by Captain Daniel Reyes, stepped off the shuttle. He tried to keep his stride calm and confident, though inside his heart was a storm of nerves. They were led into a grand hall, where the ceiling stretched higher than any building on Earth. Light fractured through the crystal walls, casting thousands of shimmering patterns on the floor. At the far end of the hall, seated on a throne carved from a single massive crystal, was the Queen. She did not rise as they entered. Her presence was immense, almost impossible to describe. Her skin was pale, almost silver, and her eyes glimmered like twin stars. Every movement, however small, seemed deliberate, and the humans felt as if the walls themselves bowed to her presence. Captain Reyes's translator worked overtime, converting the soft, musical language of the Virexians into English. "Welcome, humans," the Queen's voice echoed, calm but full of authority.
"You have come far. Speak your purpose."
Reyes swallowed. He had rehearsed the speech countless times, but now, standing before an alien ruler whose history spanned centuries, the words felt fragile. "Your Majesty," he began, "we come in peace. We wish to learn from your people, to share knowledge, and to build friendship between our worlds." The Queen tilted her head slightly. "Friendship," she repeated, her voice carrying a tone the translator could not fully capture. It was neither mockery nor approval, but something in between. The delegation felt a ripple of tension. As protocol continued, the humans tried to make light conversation. They asked about the Queen's reign, the history of her empire, and her people. Everything was carefully answered, measured, and precise. The humans realized that humor was rare in this society. Laughter, casual jokes, even small talk were seen as unusual, perhaps even dangerous. Daniel Reyes, sensing the stiff atmosphere, tried to break the tension. He smiled at the Queen, slightly nervous, and said lightly, "You'd make a cute wife." The moment the words left his mouth, the room froze. Not just the Queen, but everyone. The guards, the advisors, the courtiers stopped moving as if time itself had paused. The translator's voice cut off mid-sentence. The Queen's eyes widened, the faint shimmer of surprise breaking through her otherwise perfect composure. Her lips moved, slowly forming words that sent a chill down the human delegation's spines. "I accept," she said. The room stayed silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into chaos. Reyes blinked, certain he had misheard. "Wait, I was joking," he stammered. The translator had already restarted, but the words seemed meaningless now. The Queen had spoken with certainty, a certainty that was absolute and binding. The humans did not yet understand it, but in the Virexian culture, a spoken proposal to the Queen was considered a sacred and irreversible act. Advisors rushed to whisper in the Queen's ear. Guards shifted nervously, unsure whether to attack, restrain, or retreat. Reyes's team huddled, trying to figure out what had just happened. A simple joke, a human attempt at humor, had triggered an event that could change the fate of their delegation, perhaps even the galaxy. The Queen stood, her movements fluid and elegant. She descended from the throne with an authority that made the human knees feel weak. She approached the delegation slowly, stopping only a few feet from Reyes. "I do not take this lightly," she said. "Your words have power. I have studied your species, and I find your humor intriguing. You will join me, not as a visitor, but as a companion in ways my people have never known." Reyes swallowed hard. The court was silent again, waiting for a reaction. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He tried to explain, "Your Majesty, it was a joke. But the Queen shook her head. "No. Your species speaks freely. You reveal thoughts without ceremony, and that is rare among the stars. I wish to learn more from you, personally." A wave of realization hit the delegation. This was no mere misunderstanding. The humans had just triggered one of the most important rituals in the Virexian Empire. What they thought was playful banter had become a sacred bond. The advisors looked to the Queen for direction, and she raised a single hand, signaling calm. "The bond is accepted. Proceed as tradition demands." Reyes turned to his team, panic written clearly across their faces. We need to explain, tell him it was. But in Virexian culture, explanation could not undo what was already said. Words were power, and the Queen had chosen to wield that power in a way humans could barely comprehend. The Queen spoke again, softer this time, but still carrying the same authority. "Do not fear, human. I do not seek to harm you. I only wish to understand. If you truly belong to me as spoken, then we will learn together. You will see that the bond is not a trap, but an opportunity for both our species." Reyes realized then that the stakes were not just personal. Every human on the delegation, every decision they made, would be measured against this unforeseen bond. The Empire would watch them, allies and rivals alike. A joke that could have been laughed off on Earth now carried consequences that stretched across the galaxy. He swallowed again, his throat dry. We accept your offer," he said, not because he wanted to, but because there was no other option. Even as he said it, his mind raced. How could he navigate a culture that treated casual speech as law? How could humans survive, let alone thrive, in a civilization that saw words as binding chains? The Queen smiled faintly. It was the first smile any human had seen from her, a mixture of curiosity, amusement, and respect. "Then we shall begin," she said. "But first, you must understand my people, their rules, their expectations. You must learn our ways before we can truly move forward." Over the next hours, the delegation was escorted through the palace. The humans observed a society unlike any they had encountered. The crystal towers were homes, offices, schools, and markets, all seamlessly integrated into the natural crystalline landscape. Virexians moved with grace and purpose, every action deliberate. They spoke less than humans did, but their expressions, their posture, and the colors of their masks communicated volumes. Reyes watched, fascinated and terrified in equal measure. He realized that humor, improvisation, and emotional honesty, the very qualities humans prized, were dangerous tools here, yet also potentially powerful. If used wisely, they could win allies, solve conflicts, and even inspire change. If misused, they could trigger wars, betrayal, or exile. By the time the delegation was led to their quarters, the reality of their situation sank in. A simple joke, a human quip meant to ease tension, had reshaped the mission. What they thought was a routine diplomatic visit had become a test, a partnership, and perhaps a mission to change the galaxy in ways they could not yet imagine. That night, as Reyes stared out at the sparkling Virexian skyline, he thought about what lay ahead. The Queen's acceptance was not just personal, it was symbolic. Humanity had stumbled into a ritual that could define relations between species for generations, and yet, in the depths of his fear, he felt a spark of hope. Perhaps humans, with their humor, resilience, and boundless curiosity, could navigate this strange world in ways even the Queen had never imagined. The stars outside shimmered, as if nodding in agreement. Humanity had entered Vyrex's prime with caution, but it was leaving an impression that could echo across the galaxy. And somewhere deep within the Crystal Palace, the Queen watched and waited, curious to see what humans, so unpredictable, so free with their words, would do next. The morning on Virex Prime was unlike anything the humans had experienced. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long shadows across the crystalline city. The air shimmered, carrying faint musical vibrations that resonated with the humans' bones. Even the simplest sound, like footsteps on the smooth crystal floors, seemed amplified, echoing in a way that made the palace feel alive. The human delegation gathered in their quarters, still grappling with the shock of the previous day. Captain Daniel Reyes paced back and forth. "I can't believe this happened," he muttered. "A joke, a simple joke. And now, where—" He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the team's linguist and cultural officer, leaned against the crystalline wall. Her translator hummed softly, converting the faint vibrations of the palace into something comprehensible. "We're in a position we didn't expect," she said carefully. "But maybe it's not entirely bad. We have an opportunity here to learn, to understand them from the inside." Reyes shook his head. "Inside, Sarah? We're inside in a way I don't think we can undo. We're bound by their law. By her word, and we don't even know what that fully means yet. This could get dangerous." Sarah frowned. "It's only dangerous if we let it be." "We're humans. We adapt. We survive. That's what we do." Reyes gave a small, wry smile. "Right, adapt and survive. Easy to say when the entire alien empire thinks we just pledged marriage." Before they could speak further, a soft chime echoed through the room. Their escort, a Virexian named Lyrath, appeared. She was tall, graceful, and her mask glimmered with a calming pale blue. Her movements were fluid, and she gestured for them to follow. "The Queen awaits," she said in perfect English, though her voice carried a tone that was not quite human. "There is much to discuss. It is time to understand the traditions you have entered." The humans exchanged nervous glances, but followed. They were led through corridors that seemed endless, walls that shimmered like water, floors that reflected every color of the rising suns. Lyrath explained the Empire's rules in simple terms. Every word spoken to the Queen, or in her presence, held meaning. Humor was not forbidden, but casual remarks could become binding in ways humans could not fully grasp.
"The Queen respects honesty," Lyrath said.
"She has ruled for centuries with the knowledge that few can match her understanding of language and intent. She has seen civilizations rise and fall. Few beings are as transparent as you humans. That transparency intrigues her." Reyes clenched his fists. "Intrigues her or traps us?" Lyrath tilted her head. "Perhaps both, but in this empire, transparency is a weapon and a gift." "You must learn which it is before the day ends."
When they reached the throne room again, it felt even larger than before.
The crystal floors reflected not only the sunlight, but the emotions of those present. The Queen sat high on her throne, her silver hair flowing over her shoulders like liquid metal. Her eyes, deep and penetrating, seemed to study every human in the room at once. "You have slept, human," she said to Reyes, her voice softer now, less formal. "You have had time to consider your words, and yet you are still here. That is admirable." Reyes bowed slightly, unsure how much bowing was appropriate. "Your Majesty, we want to learn. We want to understand your culture and ensure no harm comes from our misunderstanding." The Queen's eyes glimmered. "There is no misunderstanding, only perspective. Your people speak freely, without ceremony. That is rare, even in the galaxy." My people bind words as law, and your words are unpredictable. That is why I accepted. Sarah Kim stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may, your acceptance has changed the nature of our mission. We are here as diplomats, not as partners. How can we proceed without causing offense or conflict? The Queen leaned forward slightly.
You proceed by learning, by understanding my people.
By showing the qualities I see in your species: courage, loyalty, honesty, and the capacity to adapt. These are strengths I value. Reyes exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. At least she was not angry. At least she was curious, not vengeful. But the weight of centuries of tradition pressed down on them. This was not a simple joke anymore. It was a bond that could influence the Empire's decisions. Over the next hours, the humans were introduced to the palace's inner workings. They saw Virexian scholars working with intricate energy crystals, conducting experiments that seemed to manipulate light and sound in ways humans could barely understand. Soldiers trained with weapons that used vibrations to cut through crystal and metal alike. Every aspect of life seemed governed by a balance between precision and art, a harmony humans had never known. As they walked, Lyrath explained more of the Queen's role. She has been alone for centuries, bound by tradition and duty. She has seen alliances form and crumble, entire worlds destroyed by misunderstanding. That is why she values transparency in humans. You cannot hide your thoughts, nor can you fake emotion, as her people can.
That honesty, it fascinates her. Reyes felt the weight of that statement.
Humans prided themselves on honesty, but often it was reckless. Could that honesty survive in a galaxy where words were as binding as steel? Later, the Queen requested a private audience with Reyes. The other humans were led away, leaving him alone in a small chamber adorned with floating crystals that pulsed softly. She entered, her presence filling the room without a sound.
"You are different from my advisors," she said quietly.
They are careful, calculating, and polite. You speak without fear, even when you do not understand the consequences. That is both dangerous and remarkable. Reyes swallowed. Your Majesty, I did not expect any of this. We are not ready for such attention. We are humans, not rulers. We survive by adapting, not by understanding laws we cannot see. The Queen studied him. Adaptation is the key to survival. And your people have survived where many others have fallen. That is why I wish to know you. To learn what your species can teach me, and perhaps what I can teach you in return. Reyes hesitated, then nodded. We will do our best. We will learn. She smiled faintly, a gesture that carried warmth and curiosity. Good. Then you begin today. Observe, question, and understand. You will see that our world is not as simple as your histories describe. And perhaps you will find that humor, courage, and honesty are more powerful than even the strongest laws. The day passed with lessons in culture, language, and protocol. The humans learned that their every action was noticed, interpreted, and remembered. Small gestures, casual comments, even eye contact could carry meaning. They realized that surviving on Virex Prime required more than courage. It required empathy, observation, and understanding of subtle cues. Yet, there were moments of amusement. The Queen's fascination with humans led to quiet laughter behind closed doors. She asked questions about Earth customs, about human food, music, and traditions. She listened intently to tales of human mistakes, adventures, and small acts of heroism. For the first time in centuries, she seemed not just a ruler, but a learner. By evening, the humans were exhausted but intrigued. They gathered in their quarters to discuss the day's lessons. I didn't think I'd be learning from an alien empire like this, Sarah said. And yet, it feels like we are already shaping their understanding of humanity just by being ourselves.
Reyes nodded.
Yes, but we have to be careful.
One wrong word, one misstep, and we could undo all this. Or worse, offend the Queen. Sarah smiled. Maybe that's the point. Maybe humans aren't meant to follow rules perfectly. Maybe our strength is in our honesty, our adaptability, and our courage. Reyes considered this. Perhaps she was right. The Queen had accepted him based on a joke, yes, but also on the qualities she saw in humans, the willingness to speak, to act, to risk. That willingness could be dangerous, yes, but it was also their greatest weapon. That night, the stars of Vyrix Prime seemed closer, sharper, brighter. The twin moons reflected off the crystal towers, creating a city that glittered like 1,000 diamonds. As Reyes looked out at the view, he felt a spark of determination. Humanity had stumbled into a ritual they did not fully understand. They were bound to a queen whose power spanned centuries, and yet he felt a strange hope. Humans could survive here. They could adapt, and perhaps in ways the Queen had not yet imagined. They could teach her something about courage, laughter, and life itself. The first day on Vyrix Prime had ended, but it was only the beginning. The humans had survived the shock of the Queen's acceptance. They had begun to see the depth of her world, and most importantly, they had glimpsed the possibilities. That a simple joke, a casual word, could open doors to alliances, understanding, and change the galaxy itself. The Queen watched from her palace, silent but alert. She had accepted a human based on words, yes, but also on the potential she saw. Potential to teach, potential to challenge, and potential to change her empire in ways she had not dared to hope. The game had begun, and both human and Queen were ready to see where it would lead. The next day on Vyrix Prime began with a stillness that contrasted sharply with the excitement of the previous day. Captain Daniel Reyes and his team awoke to the soft hum of the palace crystals. Light danced across the walls in golden, blue, and violet streaks, and the air seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the planet itself. Everything about this world reminded the humans that they were far from Earth, far from the rules and safety of home. Reyes rubbed his eyes and tried to shake off the exhaustion from yesterday's events. The Queen's acceptance of his joke had left him both honored and terrified. In the quiet moments before the day began, he reflected on what that acceptance meant. It was not just a personal bond. It was a challenge. To survive on Vyrix Prime, he and his team would need to understand the Empire, its rules, and the depth of its traditions. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, however, was already awake and scanning reports from their translators. "Captain," she said softly, "I've been studying their language more deeply. There are layers of meaning in every word. Humor, sarcasm, even hesitation. Each one carries weight. We have to be careful, but if we use it well, we can communicate ideas that are, surprisingly, powerful."
Reyes nodded. Surprisingly powerful or dangerously misinterpreted?
Sarah smiled. Both, probably, but humanity has survived worse than misinterpreted jokes. We adapt. That's our strength. Before they could discuss further, Lirath appeared, her mask glowing a calming blue. "The Queen requests your presence in the Hall of Mirrors. There is much to learn about the responsibilities you have entered, and there are questions she wishes to ask." The delegation followed her, walking through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Crystal pillars rose from the floor, refracting the light in patterns that shifted with their movement. Reyes noticed that the reflections in the walls did not always match reality. Sometimes he saw himself taller, sometimes shorter, sometimes with subtle changes that made him wonder if the palace itself was observing them. When they entered the Hall of Mirrors, the effect was overwhelming. Hundreds of mirrored crystal panels lined the room, each reflecting the humans, the palace, and the Queen in an infinite series of images. The Queen sat at the far end, her figure multiplied countless times, her eyes fixed on them with unblinking intensity. You have come willingly, she said, her voice echoing in all directions. Yesterday, you accepted a bond without fully understanding its consequences. That shows courage, or foolishness. Perhaps both. I wish to know why humans speak without fear, even when the outcome is uncertain. Reyes stepped forward, choosing his words carefully.
Your Majesty, I cannot speak for all humans, but we have learned that honesty and action often matter more than caution. We make mistakes, yes, but we also survive them.
Perhaps that is why we speak freely. We know that even if consequences are harsh, we can endure and adapt. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. Endurance is admirable, but it is not always enough. Power is not measured by survival alone. It is measured by understanding, strategy, and influence. How do you humans know when to act and when to remain silent? Sarah, sensing an opportunity, spoke next. We often don't. We rely on instinct, empathy, and observation. We learn quickly, and we trust each other. Even in chaos, we find patterns and act together. That is our strength. The Queen studied them for a long moment, her mask shimmering in pale gold. Your people are unpredictable. That is both their weakness and their power. You survive because you are flexible, yes, but also because you care for one another. That is a concept my empire has not valued in centuries. Loyalty exists, but it is based on fear, law, or obligation. Not trust, not genuine care. Perhaps your presence here can teach me something my empire has forgotten. Reyes exchanged a glance with Sarah. He had not expected to hear the Queen speak so openly. It was as if yesterday's joke had opened a door to something more than protocol. It had created curiosity, a connection that might shape the empire itself. Before they could respond further, alarms sounded softly throughout the palace. The vibrations in the air shifted. The Queen's expression remained calm, but the courtiers around her tensed. Lyroth's mask flashed bright red. Intruders, she said. A faction within the Empire seeks to disrupt your presence. They do not accept this. Bond. Reyes felt his heart race. Intruders? Here? In the palace? The Queen stood, her movements precise and commanding. They underestimate the humans, she said. They believe your species weak. That is their first mistake. Follow me. The humans followed the Queen through a side corridor that led to an observation chamber overlooking the city. Outside, a small fleet of vessels approached, sleek and dangerous, their intent clear. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to challenge, to attack. Reyes felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was not a battle they had expected, but humans had faced worse odds.
Sarah? Lyroth? Any suggestions?
He asked. Sarah pointed to the city below. The Virexian defenses are strong, but their patterns are rigid. If we can analyze their movements, we can predict their strategy and respond in ways they won't anticipate. We can help defend the city, not as warriors, but as humans using ingenuity. The Queen's eyes glimmered with interest. Yes, that is what I wish to see. Your species does not fight with strength alone. You think, improvise, and adapt. Use these skills. Show me how humans protect what they value. For hours, the delegation worked with the Queen and her council. They analyzed attack patterns, proposed defensive maneuvers, and suggested tactics that combined human intuition with Virexian technology. The alien advisors were skeptical, but the Queen's authority allowed her to test the humans' ideas. Slowly, their suggestions began to influence the Empire's response. Outside, the attackers advanced, confident in their superiority. Inside, humans and Virexians moved with a synchronized determination. The human suggestions, unpredictable, flexible, and based on instincts rather than rigid rules, turned the tide. Defensive barriers were shifted, energy fields redirected, and small squads deployed in ways the attackers had not anticipated. By the time the sun dipped toward the horizon, the attack had been repelled. The intruders retreated, frustrated and surprised by the humans' ingenuity. The city had survived, not through sheer power, but through adaptability, collaboration, and quick thinking. The Queen turned to the delegation, her eyes shining with respect. "You have done what my empire could not achieve alone. Your presence has altered the outcome of this conflict. That is no small feat. Humans, you demonstrate not only courage, but also cleverness. That is why I accepted you. That is why you matter here."
Reyes, exhausted but exhilarated, bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, it was a team effort. The humans could not have done it alone.
Your guidance and your trust made the difference." The Queen's smile was faint but genuine. "Trust is earned, not given lightly. You have earned mine. But remember, the galaxy is wide, and challenges are many. This was only a small test. Greater trials await. I accepted a bond yesterday, yes, but today, you have shown that your species has the potential to influence not just me, but all who live under my rule." Sarah leaned closer to Reyes as they were escorted back to their quarters.
"Did you hear that? Influence the Empire? We actually did something amazing today."
Reyes allowed himself a small smile. "Yes, but we also learned how fragile everything is. One wrong word, one misstep, and all of this could have gone very differently." Sarah nodded. "True. But look at what we can do when we work together, when we adapt, when we act with courage. Humans may not be perfect, but we survive, and sometimes we thrive, in ways no one expects." The rest of the evening was spent in quiet reflection. The humans understood more deeply now the significance of the Queen's acceptance. It was not merely a formal ritual or a political act. It was a recognition of potential, of qualities that the Empire had long forgotten: honesty, courage, loyalty, and the willingness to act even in uncertainty. As night fell, the twin moons of Vyrix Prime rose, casting silver and violet light across the crystalline towers. The city glimmered, alive with energy and history, and the humans gazed out over it, feeling the weight of both responsibility and possibility. Reyes understood that their journey had only begun. The Queen had accepted him based on a joke, yes, but that joke had sparked curiosity, opened doors, and created a bond that could reshape an empire. The humans had proven their worth not through strength alone, but through ingenuity, cooperation, and the courage to act when the stakes were highest. In the quiet moments before sleep, Reyes thought of Earth, of his family, and of the countless humans who had faced impossible odds and survived. Perhaps that same spirit, that same adaptability had brought them here to this moment. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength was not in technology, laws, or armies, but in the ability to connect, to act, and to endure, no matter the world, no matter the challenge. The Queen observed from her throne, her mind alive with questions and curiosity. The humans had not only survived the day's challenges, they had demonstrated potential, adaptability, and courage. For the first time in centuries, she saw a path forward that combined her empire's strength with humanity's unpredictability. The bond was no longer just ceremonial. It had become a partnership, a test, and perhaps a turning point for both species. And somewhere in the glittering towers of Vyrix Prime, a story began to take shape, a story of humans, of courage and humor, of connection and ingenuity, a story that could change not just one planet, but the course of the galaxy itself. The days following the first attack passed in a tense rhythm. The humans moved carefully, learning the Empire's customs, observing the Queen, and trying to understand the delicate balance of power in Vyrix Prime. Yet even as they gained trust, the shadow of danger lingered. Not everyone in the Empire had welcomed the Queen's acceptance of the human bond. Some factions saw the humans as intruders, unworthy of influence, a threat to centuries of tradition. Captain Daniel Reyes began to sense the growing tension. Each day, new whispers reached him through subtle gestures, half-spoken words, and the changing colors of the court's masks. The queen, however, seemed unbothered. She moved with calm confidence, yet her eyes always carried the faintest glimmer of calculation, as if she were preparing for challenges even she could not fully predict. Reyes and his team were summoned to a council chamber. The room was circular, crystal panels lining the walls, each one reflecting a different angle of the humans and Virexians alike. The queen sat at the center, her silver hair glowing faintly in the soft light, her posture regal yet approachable. Around her, advisors whispered in low tones, their masks flickering with colors that betrayed unease, anger, or curiosity. "You have learned quickly," the queen said as they entered. "But understanding my people is only the beginning. Leadership is tested not by calm days, but by crises. Today you will see that the galaxy does not wait for preparation. It tests those who are ready, or those who think they are." Reyes swallowed. "Your Majesty, what kind of test is this?" Before she could answer, an alarm sounded. The crystal panels shifted, projecting images from across the city and beyond. Small fleets of ships were approaching, not the previous attackers, but a coordinated strike from multiple factions. The palace's defenses were already preparing, but this was larger, more organized, and clearly intended to send a message. The humans were no longer observers. They were at the center of a conflict that could engulf the entire city. Sarah Kim leaned toward Reyes. "Captain, their formations are predictable in pattern but variable in detail. If we can analyze their movements and respond quickly, we might minimize damage. But we have to think differently this time. We can't just follow protocol." Reyes nodded. "Then let's do what humans do best. We improvise, we adapt, and we fight smarter." The queen watched silently, her eyes bright with interest. She had seen countless strategies and calculations fail over her long reign, but the humans' unpredictability intrigued her. She allowed them a degree of autonomy, trusting their instincts even as the battle began to unfold outside the palace. The humans moved quickly, coordinating with Virexian soldiers. They suggested rearranging energy barriers in ways the aliens had never considered, creating decoy signals, and deploying small strike teams to disrupt enemy formations. The attackers, confident in their strategy, were caught off guard. The humans' improvisation turned the tide in subtle but significant ways. Reyes could feel the adrenaline rising. He realized that humanity's strength was not in overwhelming force, but in adaptability. Their minds worked differently. Their instinctive reactions, combined with careful observation, made them formidable. He marveled at the queen's calm composure as she observed every decision, noting which ideas were successful and which faltered. As the battle progressed, the humans found themselves coordinating multiple tasks at once. Sarah directed energy shield adjustments, while Reyes advised on troop positioning. Other members of the delegation worked with Virexian engineers to reinforce vulnerable areas. Each small success amplified confidence, not only for the humans, but also for the soldiers and citizens who had been terrified at the thought of invasion. Hours passed. The attackers tried new tactics, but each time the humans responded with a combination of intuition and strategic thinking. They did not rely solely on Virexian methods or human logic alone, but blended both. The result was a defense that was fluid, unexpected, and highly effective. Finally, as the twin suns began to set, the attackers were forced to retreat. Their formations collapsed under the combined ingenuity of humans and Virexians. The city had been defended not by overwhelming firepower, but by cleverness, observation, and teamwork. The queen rose from her throne, her eyes shining with pride and a hint of wonder. "You have done what few could," she said. "You have defended my empire with strategy, courage, and innovation, not as soldiers, but as humans." "That is your power." Reyes bowed, exhausted but relieved. "Your Majesty, we only did what we thought necessary. Humanity survives by adapting." "We acted as we always do, together, quickly, and without fear." The queen's mask shimmered in pale gold. "And that is why your presence here matters. You remind my empire of qualities it has forgotten. Courage, ingenuity, and loyalty born of choice, not obligation. These are human strengths. You have shown me that the galaxy can be influenced not by domination alone, but by creativity and spirit. As the humans recovered, the Queen led them to the palace gardens. The gardens were vast, filled with crystalline flora that glowed faintly in the fading sunlight. The air was rich with soft music, natural harmonics created by the resonance of the crystals themselves. It was a place of reflection and learning.
"You have done well today," the Queen said, her voice calm.
"But understand this. The galaxy will not forgive mistakes easily. You have proven your worth in a single day, but the real tests are yet to come. You will need to understand not only my people, but our enemies, and perhaps even those who hide among allies."
Reyes nodded. "We are ready to learn. We will do our best."
Sarah looked around the gardens. "Captain, I think the Queen is not only testing us in battle, she's testing our judgment, our ability to influence others, and our creativity. She wants to see if humans can lead in ways she has not seen before."
Reyes allowed himself a small smile. "Then we have an advantage. Humans don't always follow rules, and we think differently."
That can be scary to others, but it can also be powerful. The Queen watched them carefully. "Indeed, you act without fear, and yet your actions are guided by instinct, observation, and loyalty. These qualities are rare.
My empire has seen great strength and skill, but it has rarely seen ingenuity paired with courage in this way. That is why you are here, and that is why you matter."
Over the next days, the humans continued their lessons and preparations. They observed the Empire's defenses, met with scholars and leaders, and learned the delicate politics of the court. Everywhere they went, their presence caused subtle ripples. Courtiers whispered about the humans' influence, and some factions began to plot, fearing that the bond between the Queen and humans could shift power in unpredictable ways. Despite the growing tension, the humans found moments of lightness. The Queen, curious about Earth, asked about human customs, music, and humor. She laughed softly at tales of human mistakes and small acts of bravery. She asked questions about human emotions, decisions, and bonds. Concepts that her empire had long treated as secondary to law and order. One evening, as the twin moons reflected across the crystal towers, Reyes and Sarah walked quietly along the palace walls. "Captain," Sarah said softly, "we've survived attacks, influenced strategy, and impressed the Queen. But I feel like this is just the beginning."
"The real challenge is not just defending the city. It's influencing the Empire and the galaxy in ways we don't even understand yet."
Reyes nodded. "You're right. And every day we spend here, we learn more. Not just about them, but about ourselves. Humanity has a way of adapting, surviving, and thriving, even when the rules are completely alien."
"That's our strength."
As they returned to their quarters, the humans could hear the soft hum of the palace crystals. The city was alive with energy, history, and possibility. They understood now that survival on Vyrix Prime required not just courage, but insight, ingenuity, and a willingness to act boldly. They had proven themselves in battle, yes, but the lessons they learned went deeper. They had glimpsed the ways humans could influence a civilization, not through dominance, but through connection, creativity, and trust. The Queen observed from her throne, her eyes reflecting the city's glowing towers. She had seen humans in action, faced danger, devised strategies, and inspired loyalty. She realized that this bond was more than ceremonial. It was a partnership, one that could reshape her empire and perhaps even the galaxy. And somewhere deep within the palace, the humans began to understand something crucial. They were not merely guests, observers, or diplomats. They were participants in a story that could redefine civilizations. Their courage, honesty, and ingenuity had earned them a place at the center of the empire, and their actions could echo across the stars. The night on Vyrix Prime was calm, but the humans knew that the coming days would bring new tests. Factions that opposed them would act, alliances would be challenged, and the bond with the Queen would be scrutinized. Yet they also knew that humanity's greatest strengths, adaptability, creativity, loyalty, and courage, would guide them through whatever came next. As the city shimmered beneath the twin moons, Captain Daniel Reyes understood this. Humans had arrived as strangers on a distant planet, but they were already leaving a mark. The bond with the Queen, begun with a single unexpected joke, had grown into something far greater, and the galaxy, vast and full of unknown dangers, was about to see just how powerful humanity could be when it acted with intelligence, heart, and courage. The morning dawned quietly on Vyrix Prime, but the calm was deceptive. Captain Daniel Reyes and his team could sense it immediately. The air hummed differently, the palace crystals vibrating with subtle tension. News had arrived overnight. Rival factions, angry at the humans' influence and the Queen's acceptance, were moving fleets toward the city once more. This attack would not be small. It was designed to overwhelm, to challenge the humans and the Queen alike, and to test the Empire's loyalty. Reyes glanced at his team. Sarah Kim, Lieutenant Roberts, and the others were already reviewing plans. Their eyes showed determination, but also the faint unease that came from knowing they faced overwhelming odds.
"This is it," Reyes said quietly. "We've survived small tests.
Now we see if humans can change the outcome of a battle where failure isn't an option." Sarah nodded. "And not just survive, Captain. We can help protect the Queen, her people, and maybe even reshape the Empire in the process." Lyrath appeared, her mask glowing a deep blue. "The Queen requests your presence immediately. She wishes to speak with you before the battle begins." The humans followed her into the throne room. The Queen sat with calm composure, her silver hair flowing like liquid metal. Their courage, honesty, and ingenuity had earned them a place at the center of the Empire, and their actions would be remembered for generations. The city of Vyrix Prime had survived its greatest threat not because of strength alone, but because humans had acted boldly, using creativity, observation, and teamwork to guide an empire through peril. The Queen's acceptance of a joke had sparked a chain of events that changed the Empire forever. And so, humanity had proven its value in the galaxy, not through dominance, not through weapons alone, but through the courage to act, the ingenuity to solve impossible problems, and the willingness to protect what mattered most. Their legacy had begun, and the universe had taken notice. The night was calm, the city glowing softly under the twin moons. The humans rested, knowing the trials of Vyrix Prime were not over, but confident that their courage, loyalty, and ingenuity would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. For humanity had arrived on this distant world as strangers, and had already begun to change the course of its history.